I wanted to show you, first of all, I wanted to tell you why I called you all here tonight. I enjoyed writing this book, researching this book so much. You can't hear me?
No.
Now you can hear me?
Yeah.
Oh boy, I'm gonna. All right. I enjoyed writing this book so much that I really wanted to share it with you. I didn't think it was, going to be a bestseller or anything, but it was so much fun. And I dragged Ezzy along with me, and we really had a lot of surprises. Look at the title. Wait, here's the title. In English, it's different. It's different. It's not out in English right now. It's being negotiated. But in English, it's Here Lie. Yeah. Here Lie has two meanings. And we discovered, as we went along, that there was a lot of prevarication in poets' graves. And there was a lot of stuff to discover, a lot of information that was being hidden or was being lost. And it wasn't just a visit to a grave that we took care of. We had. But let me begin with, maybe I'm going the wrong way, maybe not. I'm going to start with Yeats because I always start with Yeats. And his poem that he thought was going to be the last poem of this book, and then he changed his mind and made a sexy poem. But he really wanted something serious here. And he says something that we have to remember throughout. Though gravediggers toil as long, sharp their spades, their muscles strong, they but thrust their buried men back in the human mind again. And that kind of echoes. And I think we're going to learn more about that idea, about thrusting what, as you spoke, about thrusting the human mind back into the human mind, themselves and the concept of the human mind, that we have a collective consciousness that has to be renewed again and again. But as you can see, as I jumped along, I want to start with Allen Ginsberg because that's where we began. And I say we because it's Ezra Gut, who accompanied me at 5 o'clock in the morning when we landed in Newark Airport. Newark Airport, as you know, as some of you know, is a very deserted place, especially at night. And there's nothing to see, nothing to do, no place to go. However, what I remembered was Allen Ginsberg's last poem. He says, "When I die, I don't care what happens to my body. Throw ashes in the air, scatter them in East River, bury an urn in Elizabeth, New Jersey, B'nai Israel Cemetery." But I want a big funeral. He never gave up. But in an earlier poem that he wrote about his father's death, and I've lost it, he writes, "Near the scrapyard, my father will be buried. Near the Newark Airport, my father will be. On exit 14, Turnpike, New Jersey South." You know where to go. "Through the toll gate, service road number 1. Now, how could you miss it? So, 5 o'clock in the morning, we arrive at the deserted cemetery. It was not light yet. And now I think, what were we thinking of? One of the worst neighborhoods in Newark to explore a cemetery, but we did it. And here, everything was exactly as he describes it, and I want to show it to you, if I can. If something allows me. Okay, this is from a poem that he wrote when his father was dying. And we don't have sound. He says, near the scrap guard my father will be buried, near the Winston cigarette sign. Can you hear it?
No.
No. Neither can I. But then you can see everything that he describes. I know you told me to read it out loud and not to depend on the film. But everything that he describes is there. The chemical factory, the beer factory, the gate, the
train.
the green gate, the junkyard, the electric lines, and most important, it's where the highway is, where the trains are, where the airport is. How can you miss it? I'm going to be buried in the central place in the world, where everything comes together. And there you'll find every person that he writes about. This is Ginsberg Lindsay, his family. He had the Gaidamax, his mother, his father on one side, an empty space for him, and his mother on the other side. Not his real mother, but his stepmother. Because some of you may remember his real mother, Naomi. She was the subject of Kaddish, and she did not make it home, and he was brought up by Edith, his husband's second wife. This is his father's grave next on one side of him. Louis Ginsberg, who put his poem, I gotta figure out this distance so that you can hear me and I don't blow into your ear. Louis Ginsberg had a number of books out. He was a poet. And here we are again. What have I done? He's and a good poet. But what he says here is explaining a riddle with a stone. That's the last part of his poem about death. And what is death? And we don't know, we don't understand, and we can't, how can we find out what death is, and all that stuff, and he ends with that, explaining a riddle with a stone. His son put it on, not him. But then we have, next to him now, Erwin Allen Ginsberg. And as you can see in the bottom, he takes also a part of his poem that is a tribute to his father, and kind of an acknowledgement that he belongs here. This is his place. And then above is Mishavel Hador Doresh HaYichud. Israel Nomi, his real mother. But what does it mean? I kept going crazy looking for it. I kept asking people. I asked his secretary, Bob Rosenthal, who put that there? Mishover Hador, first of all. Doresh HaYichud, second of all. They're separated. Who put it there? Why is it there? Well, I asked the secretary. He said probably Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shlomi. I asked my brother, what does it mean? What does it mean? My brother's a biblical scholar. What does it mean, Mishoel Adol? Well, it could be a singer of the generation, maybe, or, you know, the poet of the generation, or maybe seeker of unity, maybe. But then I started talking about it, and Rachel Eliol said to me, "No, that's from Anabachach, a poem prayer that is, whoops, I put them together, yes, that talks about God's, our desire for unity with God and the unity of peoples." And that, of course, is what Allen Ginsberg wanted. So that we had that amazing a thing that came out, it all came together. Someone wrote according to what Allen Ginsberg might have wanted, but Allen Ginsberg didn't know Hebrew, and was not. You're wondering why this keeps changing, right? But unity is not what his burials were about. His burials. First of all, he was cremated. Not a very Jewish thing to do, right? He was cremated. His rabbi, he was cremated, and his ashes were divided. Anywhere you read it will say the ashes were divided into three. 2 Buddhist centers, Shambhala and the Jewel Heart, and they look like that. This is the Shambhala Mountain Center where he's buried where his ashes are buried with his lover, Peter Orlovsky. The Jewel Heart where he taught, and there was a shrine to him. And, whoops, Har HaZeitim. How did that happen? I'm afraid that was my fault. He was here, and he told me that he had a relative who was a famous poet in Israel, and he would like to visit his grave. And I said, well, famous poet. Har HaZeitim, huh? He said, yeah, it was, you know, and Chadam. Chadam? I said, and I got stunned. I didn't know what to say. We were right in this room. And if I had thought, I could have said, well, let's go to Trumpeldor, you can visit him. But I thought he was talking about somebody else, and I didn't feel fancy going to Jerusalem. So I didn't say anything. So his ashes, 1 tablespoon of his ashes were saved by the secretary, Bob Rosenthal, who took it to Har HaZeitim and scattered it there, probably in the wind. But that's another story.
We're not going to hear you now if you're away from the mic. I'm sorry to be that person.
No, I'm going to take this mic. That's because I think this one you turned off, but I'm going to turn it. Yes. All right. So
Thank
now
you.
it will move with me. Now, we have another different kind of example. You remember this? This is Elizabeth Barrett Browning. I just want to point out that in those days we didn't have facelifts or Botox or things, and so what she did was she had a wig that she covered her cheeks with. So she looks really nice, and she was 6 years older than her husband, so it was a problem. These are things, you know, have to be practical. Anyway, she's the one with How Do I Love Thee, the most famous love song, love poem in, oh boy, in English. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. You don't even need me to read it, because you all know it. How do I love thee? Let me show you where she's buried. It's a traffic island in Florence. Nice, isn't it? I mean, the story about Elizabeth Barrett Browning is that she was taken from her father's tyrannical supervision, and by Robert Browning, who whisked her off to Florence, where where she recovered from her strange illnesses that were never diagnosed, and she had a son, and she lived almost a normal life except for her tuberculosis. It was helped by the morphine addiction that she had. She did very well with that, and he did very well with it. But let me show you something about the grave, and we'll see what happened to her. You see it? How beautiful? It's so beautiful that Emily Dickinson wrote poems about it.
Hmm.
The soul selects her own society and then closes the door. Let's see, do I have it? Yes. It's a beautiful grave. However, if you look closely, you notice that there is no name. Her name isn't on it. There's something EBB here. Birthday, no. Just her, well, maybe because she was 6 years older than her husband. But then we have another problem. This image on the mausoleum, on the sarcophagus, it doesn't look like she's got her beautiful hair covering her face. It doesn't look like her profile. And when Robert Browning was informed of it, because he escaped Florence as soon as the funeral was over, took his son and ran back to London and started his amazing career. He had spent all of his time taking care of her and taking care of her career. She was incredibly well known, and he took care of all the money, all the all the obligations that a poet laureate to be, which he was, had to fulfill. But as soon as she left, as soon as she died, he left. And he left for London, where he made himself an amazing career, and sent someone, Lord Leighton, that you probably know, very well-known sculptor, to create the grave. The grave, however, here we are again. We saw that it doesn't look like her. He did say he loved her. I mean, in later poems, he said something. There's 2 lines of the 15 volumes that he wrote after he went back to London that mention her. Now, there's more of a problem. Because people started complaining this doesn't really suit her, this grave. Oops, I keep doing that, I'm sorry. This doesn't suit her, this grave. It's not her, it's not it's not noble. So he got someone to say, well, this is a representative of the poet, the woman poet. She is her grave is for all women poets. And we don't need to see her face. She's bigger than that. But the grave was the grave was kind of low. You can see they added all this to fit the business of, her being a representative woman poet. But there's another problem. When he died, he was buried in Westminster Abbey, and his name, the dates of his birth and death, everything. 25 years later, the son added, his wife was buried. You get the idea. There's something funny about this, and there's something more funny. You have read Robert Browning. You know things like My Last Duchess.
Ibn Ezra.
Well, Ibn Ezra is about a rabbi, but he's got a lot of dead women in his poetry. When they were together, he bought a book about a murder, about a murder in Arezzo of the husband to the wife, killing his wife, and his wife didn't want it in the house. She didn't like the book, and strangely enough, it didn't disappear. When he got back to London, he wrote a 12-volume book called The Ring in the Book, about the different views of the different characters in this murder. So he was very interested in
Women.
in his wife, but it was also becoming in style. The idea of the dramatic monologue is when a man speaks to someone, but you have to have that other person quiet to have a dramatic monologue. So there's all these women, they're dead or dying, or they're out the door somewhere, and he's the one that really got the style going. It's a fun, a fun fact. I was going to have My Last Duchess pull the curtain, and I lost it this morning in a computer crash. But I thought you would like that idea that Browning had a fixation that was characteristic of his times. He's not alone with this. There's another fact I should tell you. I told you she was a morphine addict. I didn't tell you that the night she died, her doctor was on vacation, the other doctor couldn't come, her nurse was, her friend and caregiver was off, and he was alone, and alone with her, and he said, she died. She sat up and said, it's wonderful, and then she died. Now, when you have tuberculosis and you're coughing, you don't say it's wonderful. However, when you've had a good dose of morphine, a good dose, you might say that. I don't mean to say it was intentional. I can understand that he might have, felt the necessity to relieve her suffering in some way. But there's also, there's this little suspicion that people don't talk about. So So, it's a little different. So I thought you might be interested in knowing these little secrets about, or maybe not. Maybe I've made it up. No, I haven't made it up. I haven't made up the facts. I made the conclusion is a problem. I mean, there's no proof. There's no way to prove what I'm saying. No. I'm giving you somebody else. Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde, after 2 years of hard labor in the Reading jail, was released and was exiled to Paris. Spent 3 years suffering from an injury to his ear that he received when in jail. He was not allowed to see his children. His wife was forced to divorce him and change her name. All of his goods were taken away all of his belongings were taken away from him. He had nothing. He relied on a lot of donors to survive. And you remember that the story is that his last words were, as he was dying in the hotel, either this wallpaper goes or I do. They had no money to bury him. They found a cemetery outside of Paris, and this was it. And yet, the feeling the whole time was, there's something wrong here. Oscar Wilde was a great man. He must have been a great man. So some Ada Leverson, one of his best friends, got a sculptor, Jacob Epstein, who was, a famous sculptor, to design a new grave for him in Père Lachaise. And so he went. It took 7 years. They made it, and as you can see, it's the Sphinx, which is what Wilde called Ada Leverson. He called her the Sphinx. But as soon as it got there, this is it. Now what? It got covered up. Why? Because their genitals. It was a naked man-woman. It was about bisexuality, homosexuality. It got covered up. It got covered up for a few years until they figured out, well, we can put a fig leaf over it. But that got stolen. And in fact, the genitals were stolen. And, this is what it looks like. A little shady, but there it is. You see, it's a man-woman, but it's mostly men.
No, I didn't hear that. I was wondering too.
Hmm?
Where is it?
Père Lachaise.
Hmm?
Père Lachaise in Paris. It's if you're famous, I mean, you're Jim Morrison, then you can be buried there, or Proust. Oh, that's me. When I came there, it was a nice place. They say, by the way, the genitals are on the desk of the curator of the cemetery. It's a paperweight. Now, around the end of the century, beginning of the next century, there was a new trend to kiss the statue of Oscar Wilde. And everybody kissed him. You put on really powerful lipstick, and you kiss the statue. I mean, everywhere, everywhere. This was not good because you see, this I took off the internet. The others, I think they're mine, or they belong to no one. But all right, we had that. It was you see, what happened was they built they built a glass fence around it because after they had at a considerable expense cleaned off the lipstick, which turns out to be something that eats stone. So watch your lipstick. So they cleaned it off, they put a fence around it. It didn't help. It didn't help. People were cleaning they were kissing the glass. So they cleaned the glass and they said, there's a fine if you please don't kiss the glass. There's a fine. It was a small fine. They increased the fine to, I don't know, I think it was, at last I heard, it was €1,000. Doesn't make it, didn't help. So somehow, Oscar Wilde has been redeemed, and I think that's a really amazing moment, if he had only been alive to see it. On the other hand, we have people like, wait a minute, I warned you to tell me when am I getting close to the end? Okay. Because I get carried away. Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe was discovered walking the streets in Baltimore, completely confused. He was 40 years old. He collapsed, died. Nobody knows why he was wearing other people's clothes. Nobody knows what he died of, although there are many guesses. He could have died of diabetes. He could, because that wasn't diagnosed yet. He could have died of I don't know, alcoholism, but he didn't drink. He could have done all kinds of things. He could have died of that people say. In fact, the day after he died, one of his enemies, Rufus Griswold, wrote the biography. First of all, wrote an elegy and said, this is a very bad man. No one will miss him. Drunk, hateful, he was, what do you call it? He copied everybody. He made up his own, this Poe, we're lucky we're rid of him. That was, one of his best friends.
No wonder he died.
You gotta be very careful about who you give authority to. All right, so for years, people thought this was true, that Edgar Allan Poe was an evil man who wrote very strange things. But you may notice, I keep forgetting I have this beautiful screen here. He was buried in the back of a churchyard. No one put anything on his grave. It was a small churchyard. The sexton knew where he was. Why bother? And there were some relatives around, so they could, they could take care of it if they wanted to. So there was nothing on his grave until one day the sexton put a stone that said 80, so that he'll remember, this is the place. And as people began to, remember him and remember that he invented the detective story, he invented the horror story, he invented, a whole kind of poetry that was completely unlike anything else. As people began to remember this, they began to think about, maybe there's something, maybe there should be some kind of, tribute to him. The problem was, they had a stone. They put a stone. Stone didn't last very long. They said, let's dig it up and make a really, dig him up and put him in a good place in the front, because the church had been built. You want to put him in the front, on the corner of the street, so that everyone will come to the church. But they didn't know which direction the stone was facing. So they dug up the wrong guy. See, it doesn't happen with Jews. When we have Chilul Kadisha, you should be grateful. Then they put up a sign, a stone for where the original place was. For 75 years, on his birthday every year, a mysterious man with a black hat that covered half of his face and a cape that would come and place 3 roses on this grave and a bottle of cognac. He drank the glass and left the glass and the bottle, and that was for 75 years. That added to the mystery of, we still don't know who he was. He stopped coming in 2000, but he was there for a long time. And people started saying that they saw Poe walking around the cemetery. It was getting more and more mysterious. It's still a creepy place. But they moved the grave. Here, they have the raven too, by the grave.
Yeah, and there was
Like the old grave. Remember the raven?
over the raven there was some writing.
Right here, there's the raven on the
Can't read it.
and there's writing that I couldn't make out. It says, quote, the raven nevermore. There was nothing too mysterious about this, but the mystery was the visitor. And then they built a new grave. It was even better, because you know that Poe married his first cousin, right? And she died of tuberculosis when she was 20. So his aunt, who was his mother-in-law, took charge of this building, of the new tomb of Edgar Allan Poe, and she's on one side. She's buried on one side. I was going to show you, but couldn't today. Maybe I can. This is the grave. On either side is Maria, his aunt, mother-in-law, and the other side has Virginia, his wife. But the story of Virginia. Virginia died in New York, was buried in a New York cemetery. But they were urban renewal. They were getting rid of the cemetery. They announced, whoever has people here, come and get them. So this biographer of Poe said, I'm going to go get it. And he arrived just in time, as he says. He arrived when her bones were in the shovel. And he grabbed the bones and put them in a box and took them home and didn't know what to do with them. So he put them under his bed for 7 years. This, I don't understand, I don't understand it either. But then they got him, they got the bones, they brought them to the right side of the grave, and they're all together now. And everything is a happy ending. They kept getting his dates wrong on the grave.
Yes, I see.
But now it's okay. He was, as you see, January 20th to October 7th. And this is his wife. And that was it. Now I'm gonna skip ahead because I'm telling you all these ghost stories. And I wish Dara were here because she's gonna kill me for this. But here it is. In Walt Whitman, infirm, kind of old and weak and poor, was approached by a new cemetery, the Harley Cemetery. And he said, listen, we can give you a plot, because it'd be really good for our business. We'll give you a really good plot, big one. And so this is the first case I know of PR in the cemetery. He went for it, and he designed the grave. This is his handwriting, and this is his design. This is his. These are his instructions. This is what he wanted the cemetery, his grave, to look like. And now, how do we do this? I will talk and you won't hear it, so I'll tell you more. He talks about in his poetry that he is lying under the grass, waiting for you. Remember, if you look for me, find me under the grass. So this is where I started reading the poem, and it took me a little while to get down. I'm very clumsy, so don't, you understand it took longer than it should have to get down to the bottom of the grave. But it is a journey. Don't you worry that I'm going to fall? The whole time. So that he paid, or he didn't pay. He was donated the money for his home, and then a few years later for his grave. The home that he lived in cost $1,750. The grave cost $4,000. You can see why. You can see why. You can see what I couldn't get out of here. I couldn't get down. I talk. But it is the side of a hill. It isn't that deep. It looks, it looks very imposing, and there is a sketching of Blake of the House of Death that looks like this, but it's smaller. So I just want you to appreciate the size and appreciate the fact that I don't have sound here. I probably do, but I don't know how. So I explained to you how long it took to make this grave. I tell you how wonderful it is, and who is buried in there. Because once you make a grave that size, you can't be alone. He brought his family from Long Island. Put his parents on either side. Where am I? Here we are. His parents on either side, his cousin, his nephew. there wasn't a gate. It was meant to be open, but apparently there was a need for a gate, and so so it was put in. Now, I think I've spoken enough in this film, but you get the idea. And so we will now take a look at all the people that he's with. Yeah, make it, and maybe more. But this place is it's a center. It is a place that is regarded as a center for poetry. And you bring the children read their own poetry, and they read Whitman's poetry, and they learn to respect poetry, and we should have something like this too. So that maybe Whitman was right, that if you give enough attention to the poet and what remains of him, that something will happen to poetry. Now, Yeats is the one I really wanted to tell you about. It's the last, I think he's the last one. No, I think we're at time. This is Ben Bulben, the mountain behind the cemetery that Yeats wanted to be buried in Sligo, in North Ireland, because his grandparents were in the neighborhood. His ancestors he had ancestors who was in the church there. So he wrote this long poem that he thought would be the last poem under Ben Bulben, and tells you about this. Under bare Ben Bulben's head in Drumcliff churchyard Yeats is laid. An ancestor was rector there long years ago. A church stands near. Oh, by the road an ancient cross, not marble nor conventional phrase of limestone quarried near the spot. By his command these words are cut, cast a cold eye on life, on death. Horsemen pass by. I don't know, there it is. And there is his grave, which says, cast a cold eye on life, on death. The only problem was, Yeats got sick. He also had tuberculosis. He had all the, the fashionable diseases. And he was taken he would spend his winters in the south of France. And he saw he was dying, and he said to his wife, if I should die here in Rockburn, Carmarthen, where the cemetery is so beautiful, I said, plant me here for a year, and then, when things are better, I'll go home. You'll take me back to Sligo. Unfortunately, he said this the end of 1939, and it took until 1945 to even have access to that place. So this you can see here is where they put him, but his wife wasn't really paying attention. I think that was the problem, because she thought she had bought the grave for him, but it was rented for 5 years. Now, after 5 years, I hadn't expected to be so lighthearted about this. After 5 years, they took the bones out and put them in the charnel house where, with everybody else. Everybody else, there was a dentist, a Belgian dentist that died around the same time. So they were there. They were in the charnel house. And this is where the problem begins for Yeats. In 1946, 47, his latest lover the last one before he died was Edith Shackleton Hilt, who went to visit the grave with her current lover, Hannah Glickstein, who was the Gluck, the painter Gluck. And when Edith saw the state, she saw that it was all bones and unidentifiable, she said, "This is crazy. I recognize that's him there." And she just fell apart. And so Gluck wrote a whole book about this whole situation. They decided that there has to be order made. First of all, nobody has to talk about this, because they had already planned to bury Yeats in his grave in the north of Ireland. So what are they going to do? Well, the French are good at keeping secrets. Delicacy. They made it a delicate situation. They took what they could. They told the Irish that they had him together, and a noble funeral was arranged.
Were they his bones?
Hmm?
Were they his bones? Nobody knows.
Nah. It was a good story, I mean, but it wasn't. Here, look at the funeral, though. They took him from this is from the Irish Times. Here he goes outside of, from France, where he is, as you can see, this is in Nice. And they said, well, why is there a new coffin? Well, the old one wasn't passing. It doesn't suit him, so they gave him a new coffin. They gave him they lowered him into the boat that, you can see that he was given a military send-off. They lowered him into the boat. The Irish delegates came on, and then he was taken to Galway. Ultimately, he had to stop it. They had a couple of stops with a few ceremonies, but he was taken to Galway, where everyone walked to Sligo. What is it? 100 miles? All right. So they probably didn't walk, but they showed themselves walking, and the funeral was very, very elaborate. It was very heartfelt, and everyone said Yeats is home. Let me continue. Of course, those disappeared. But in 2015, the news came out. The truth came out that it wasn't him. It was that Yeats wasn't there, probably not. And the Irish, of course, said it doesn't matter. He's right. His spirit is here, and what we should see, what we should consider is that he's. Now go back and read the poetry. It's much better than a trip to cemeteries. The poetry itself really counts, but the stories of the graves will never really be told completely. When I got this book, I had a manuscript. I never paid attention to it, and it was both in English and in Hebrew. And I met this guy, I don't know, at a coffee bar, and he said, "I'm a publisher. Tell me, got anything for me?" And he told him, "Yeah, I did this." He said, "Well, show it to me. I'll take it. I'll take it." but then he came back and he says, too short. I got a couple, I'm gonna give you an editor, to expand it a little. And his editor was his wife, and his editor pushed me to writing another 7 or 8 chapters, because every time she asked a question, I had the story. Now I'm telling you. There's Dorothy Parker and Keats and Shelley and Gregory Corso. There are so many different people, and everyone has an amazing story. But the question of what the stories mean altogether, I think, is what Yeats said. Back into the human mind, that they make you want to know what was in that poetry, make you want to read it. So I thank you very much for your attention. And do we have questions or what?
If anyone has a question.
When did you start writing this book? When did it come into your mind?
It didn't come into my mind. It came into the trip to Allen Ginsberg's grave that we took, because I couldn't go to see my brother that early in the morning.
That's great.
It was like basically a mistake. But then, I don't know, you start doing it, it's like peanuts. But it has been about 10 years of traveling. We did a lot of traveling in Italy and not in England, because they're orderly. I didn't go anywhere where it was orderly, where there was no story. So Jewish burials are boring because someone has taken care of it. They know it's the person. They've made sure there's a stone. But Coleridge was just discovered behind the wall of a wine cellar. I mean, England is a mess. Richard III was just discovered a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
מגרש חניה.
Yes.
כן.
Good base. I don't know. He said a third cousin, but I have no written evidence anywhere that he said that he claimed that. And I didn't know that Echad Ha'am was Asher Ginsberg at the time. You knew. Of course, everyone knew except me.
People speak as no.
See, these are things that's why I like to talk about these things, because everybody knows something more than I do. But a poet? All right. And someone is saying, are you finished? Okay. So are there any other questions? And then we can, because the food is still there, right? The food is still there, and we can ask questions individually.
We're allowed to thank you for such a I've had plenty of lectures in my life, but to have so much knowledge in such an entertaining manner, as if King Clue, as if you just shake it out and sleep. My word, so much research has gone into this. Really astounding. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You may seduce me into teaching that course. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.